I got to turn the audio down on YouTube. Otherwise, I'll hear myself, which is weird. All right, Kip, we're doing something a little different today for the Ask Me Anything. Some guys are going to be listening to this and they're going to hear it through their normal outlet, which is the podcast. And other people are listening to this or watching live on YouTube right now. How does that make you feel?
Yeah. We're put on YouTube because they're not smart enough to figure out how to use a podcast, or are we insulting them while we're live?
It's on. It's been on YouTube before. We just release it after the fact. I figured, we'd mix it up. We'd try something new, let the guys see it live, and they'll have questions and everything else. We're not going to moderate those questions, but we're just trying things. All right, we're just experimenting.
Well, and now we all have clarity of how Ryan has lost so much weight recently is because he hasn't done any workouts. It's just he's been trimming back the beard, and that in itself is
that right there
enough to lose weight.
11 pounds of weight off my beard. And I got to say, it's a relief on my neck not having to carry that much weight around on my head these last couple of days, I got to say.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been good. I just got a little bit of a wild streak and decided to go in the bathroom and trim it up. And I had to talk myself into it. It took me
beard.
20 minutes. Yeah, this beard. Yes.
Yeah.
and take care of things. So that I did.
And you shaved your head.
I buzzed it. Yeah, I mean, I usually do this every spring, summer anyways, because it's kind of like the summer dew. It's starting to warm up. Except for apparently in Maine, it doesn't warm up ever. Just when you think it's going to be spring, it snows. We had 11 inches of snow overnight. Yeah. And then our power went out for 3 days. So this is the first experience, real experience of winter, but it only lasted for a day and a half. And now it's all gone and the grass is already greening up. So it's crazy.
Yeah. I loved how we were talking about, it's getting warm and I'm going to get the Scout out. And then the next day on your Instagram, it's it's snowing. I have no power.
Yeah, so fortunately we got the generator hooked up several months ago, and it was the first time we ended up having to use it. So
it's kind of cool, though. You have to admit that's nice to be able to do. To go.
I mean, we live in such easy times right now. I mean, we didn't have to conserve energy. We didn't have to turn the lights off, although we did, But it was. Oh, the other thing we had to do is because we didn't have power, the internet was out, and so we were on the generator. So we had power to the TV. And we had to use DVDs.
What?
Yes.
The physical thing?
They're these little round discs, and they're thin, and they're silver. And what was funny is I was sitting there watching a movie.
And they're a screen, or how does it get the data off there?
Yeah, weird, right? As I was watching it, you remember the days of having to deal with scratches on your DVDs. So I'm watching this movie. Yeah. What movie was it? I was watching a movie, and all of a sudden it froze. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on right now? Why? What is happening? And it was skipping, And then I just sat there for 5 minutes like an idiot because I didn't know what to do. And finally, it corrected itself, and we drove on and watched the rest.
Then
of the
you try the whole breathe on it
the fog, and wipe it on your shirt. Just like the old Nintendo where you blew through you had a system for the original Nintendo, right? You had to blow it off and then put it in just enough to push it down where it would
totally
grab, you know what I'm talking about?
You push it all the way down, it wouldn't work. But if you push it down just enough for it to lock, then you're then you got the game working.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Wisdom is what we call this. This is wisdom.
Life in the 80s, man. Crazy. So, hey, before we get into the questions for today, I got to say something.
Yeah.
I posted something on Twitter the other day, and it did not go over well. But basically I said, here's the things that I have accomplished over the past 4 weeks.
Did you say, I went to the bathroom and I took care of business, I did some grooming.
I trimmed some things up, and everybody was pissed. No, I made this post on Twitter, and I just basically said, here's the things I've accomplished over the past, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I put, you, question mark, and put, a little hand symbol down.
What have you done? Yeah, bring it.
And because I thought, well, this would be cool. I'm curious to see what people have done. What have they produced, and that's not what happened. It was amazing at how quickly people took it out of context and misread it. Although maybe I can see now, okay, did that come across as braggadocious? Maybe that's not my intention. But even still, it was comical to me how many people decided to be upset and all worked up and offended by those comments. And the reason I bring this
celebrating,
yes,
by you celebrating your success.
Right. And heaven forbid you have any level of success while other people are struggling. Right. And so I saw this post on Instagram the other day, and it was like a meme or a quote post. And basically what it was doing, it was chastising anybody who was spreading any sort of message of positivity. In fact, the term they used was, what was it? It was positivity privilege. No, happiness privilege. That's what it was. Happiness privilege. Because other people are suffering. So when you talk about your successes while other people are suffering, you're being insensitive to their suffering, and you're supposed to be miserable like everybody else. We live in like the most interesting times. We were talking about CDs earlier. We were talking about Nintendo. We were talking about power. Like, we live in a society, in a world that we have everything right at our fingertips. All the information, power, technology, resources, food. Like, we are abundant like no other time in history. And for somebody to be upset or say that we can't be happy about that is ridiculous. And this virtue signaling nonsense of you're virtuous because you're a victim, or you're virtuous because you're suffering, in and of itself is not virtuous. It's the antithesis of virtue. It's weakness. Now, I'm not saying there aren't genuine victims out there, and I'm not saying that people don't really go through hardship, but I'm saying that we shouldn't pretend like we're victims if we're really not. We shouldn't not be excited about the progress that we've made, the things that we've accomplished, and everything that we've done just because somebody else refuses to, can't do, or is in an inferior position. And by the way, even though we're excited, we can still show levels of kindness and compassion and empathy. But it's very frustrating to me to see so many people take this path of voluntary victimhood and think that somehow they're being more moral or noble because they're behaving this way. It's a disturbing trend. It's actually, it's pathetic. And the other thing I saw quite a bit over the past couple of days with these two posts in particular is, it's amazing to me how many people believe that if somebody succeeds, like if one person succeeds, like if I succeed or you succeed or anybody listening or watching to this podcast succeeds, then it by default comes at the expense of somebody else. Yeah. Guys, my success, Kip, your success, anybody who's listening's success does not come at the expense of somebody else. Now, could it? Yeah, it could. And there are situations where people victimize and take advantage of situations. But I would say that is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
When people have levels of success, it's usually bringing other people up. Like, as we grow this movement and what we're doing here, like, we're not stepping on other people. We're lifting other people up. I mean, I can't tell you how many messages I get from men who say, you know, I've fixed things with my wife, or I've connected with my kids, or I'm losing weight. I asked for a promotion. I started a new business because of some of the things that I either read that you wrote in your book, or we listened to the podcast, or we watched this video, and thank you for doing that. Like, we can mutually and collectively rise together. My success doesn't come at the expense of yours. And it's really pathetic, and it's disturbing. So anyways, I thought we would address that first because that's important. It's important we talk about this stuff.
And what's unfortunate about it is anyone that's listening that's complaining about this, like saying, yeah, you know what, like, I'm not having, well, that's your fault.
Yeah.
I actually have no compassion whatsoever about your circumstance. Like, I'll give you a perfect example, because I'm trying to think in my mind, like, what circumstances would I have to have in my life for me not to be able to internalize and say, okay, I'm succeeding in this area, or I'm growing in this area, regardless of the circumstances which are outside of my control. And one thing that came to mind, I mentioned this last week, is I had a friend, his father just passed away. So, okay, how would he comment to your post on Twitter? You know what he could do? I'm killing it today. I'm dealing and addressing the internal issue that I'm having with my father passing away, and I'm choosing to reflect on about what a great man he was, and appreciating him, and using that to grow and become a better man myself.
Yeah. Agreed.
Awesome. Amazing way to look at that circumstance and grow and become a better person of it. I don't care what the circumstance is. There's opportunity for you to grow.
There is.
And I don't think there's any scenario by which I could say that someone couldn't say, hey, I am growing, I'm going better, regardless of their circumstance. It's whether we choose to look at it that way or not.
Yeah, and let's be really clear though too, because we're not talking about making light of actual victimhood. Like no. we're not saying that because somebody took advantage of you financially, physically, sexually, that we're not excusing that and saying even that that's your fault. We're just saying the circumstances are the circumstances. So regardless of if they're positive or negative or anywhere in between, like we need to learn to make the most of these circumstances. And somebody else succeeding doesn't diminish me or my worth as a human being.
Yeah.
And I think that's the role a lot of people have taken.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, by the way, if you don't grow from your circumstance, you are letting it win. You are giving it power over who you are as an individual. So even if it's a really horrible circumstance, don't let it win. You win. And the way you win is by learning to grow and looking for opportunities to become a better person because of it, regardless of the circumstance.
Well said.
Or in spite of it, maybe.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, there's a rant for the day. So
yeah, that was a good rant, man.
Yeah, maybe we'll have more. Maybe we'll have some more rants depending on the questions here. Yeah. But yeah, let's get into it. We'll take them for about an hour or so. If you're on YouTube, we're glad you're here, YouTube Live. So if you're not, you can check it out, youtube.com/orderofman. And I'm not moderating the questions right now. Maybe I should. Maybe we will in the future. But if you do have questions or comments, leave them in the comment section on YouTube, and we'll get back around to it as we can. So anyways, just trying something new. But yeah, let's get into the questions.
Yeah. So we're fielding questions from two primary locations today. Some leftovers from your
post on Instagram.
Yep. At Ryan Michler, Michler. So follow him there. We'll go over those questions, and then hopefully we'll be able to get to some questions from our Facebook group. To join us on Facebook, go to facebook.com/group/orderofman. And we touched base on this last time. You know, there's really like not a name in Instagram. There's just like words put together or letters put together. So I'm going to slaughter whatever.
Yes.
On the Instagram usernames, right? Like
you were excited about it last week. You're like, oh, this is nice because I don't have names. And then it was way worse than having names. So we'll do what we can here.
It was really bad. Yeah. All right. First question. Thoughts on paying for a mentor in areas you want to improve, like relationships, business, and health? Don't do it.
Stupid idea. You don't want to invest in yourself. You don't want to learn from other people who are more successful than you. Like, why? Why would you want to do that? Yes, of course.
And why pay money for a valued service? Yeah.
Of course you should do that. Now, most people are going to look at you strange when you say that. Like, I'm going to pay this mentor. Oh, you're going to pay somebody to teach you? And yes. Why wouldn't you do that? There has to be a reciprocity in value. There has to be a value exchange. So if I'm going to share information, or you're going to share information, or any number of people are going to share information, then there has to be some sort of reciprocal benefit for the person doing the mentoring. And that could be they feel good about it. Some people will, right? They want to help, and so they want to be charitable, and they feel good, and that's the value they receive by giving some sort of coaching or mentoring. I mean, I do that in some capacity when I coach my kids' sports teams. I don't get paid. You know, at the end of the year, they give me like a $20 gift card to Dairy Queen. Right? Like, I don't get paid to coach my kids' team. Which, yeah, I mean, the $20 gift card to Dairy Queen's kind of nice.
Dairy Queen's, yeah.
You could buy like 6 freezes with that or whatever, you know, so that's kind of nice. But I do it because I enjoy it, right? There's value in it for me. I get to connect with my kids. I get to feel good about helping other young men and boys in the community. Like, that feels good, and that's the reward, the benefit for me. In other cases, you know, if somebody calls me up and they say, hey, I want to start a podcast or a movement, or I want to do something similar to what you've done. Can I pick your brain? No, you can't, because there's no value in that for me. In fact, there's only an extraction of value, my time, energy, and resources. So you need to be able to compensate me. That's a fair trade. It has to be a fair. This is the root of capitalism even. Like, there has to be a voluntary exchange of value. So yeah, I think it's very important that if you're looking for specific results, whether it's fitness results or career results or, you're trying to become a professional athlete or a singer or learn to play the guitar or paint or any number of things, that hiring a coach or a mentor is extremely appropriate. And I think you should take advantage of the opportunities that are out there. Now, some people look at it and say, it's expensive and I don't know if I need to pay. Look, you can do it on your own. That's fine. But it's going to take you a lot more time and it's going to cost you a lot more money to do it on your own than it is to, and I'm not going to say shortcut, I'm going to say than it does to learn the path that you need to walk on. There's not a shortcut. Hiring a coach does not shortcut the process. It just illuminates the path a little bit better, but you still got to walk it. You still got to go through it. So it will be quicker, although it's not a shortcut.
Yeah. And we've mentioned this in the past, but there is putting meat into the game when we pay for things as well. There's a major difference between someone that asks for advice and has no investment in paying a sum of money or whatever versus an individual that is putting meat into the game and saying, okay, I'm paying Ryan this amount of money for, like, I'm going to listen differently. Right. Than if it's a free service. And part of that's a benefit to you to ensure that you're not wasting your time providing advice and guidance to someone that is not willing to even sacrifice and you know what I mean, put some assets or money into the game to ensure that, like, it's important enough for them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, everyone would just ping you constantly, right? It wouldn't be valuable at all. That's one of the benefits that we get from consulting is I get to go into a company and provide guidance and direction from a consulting perspective, and they listen to me. Why? Because they're paying a lot of money for me to be there. No doubt. So they listen and they do exactly what I say. Yeah. Yeah.
The skin in the game is very important. It's just gonna fast track your results. So yeah, completely appropriate.
Yeah. Hunter Carpentry, 2 good books to read this month. 2 good books.
Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men.
A lot of momentum around sovereignty lately.
Yeah, I've kind of picked up. I mean, frankly, I was a little jaded with the whole writing process. Like, I just didn't enjoy that process. And so it put a little bad taste in my mouth and I was like, bleh. And now a couple years into it, I'm looking at it and I get testimonials and feedback from people that it's helped and served. I'm like, all right, yeah, that was rough, but yeah, this is valuable to people. So yeah, we made a bunch of books online available for signed copies, which is no longer available. We sold those. The first run, we did 100 books and we sold them within like 3 hours. The second one, we did 200 books and we sold those within like 4 hours. It was crazy. So that's one. Yeah. Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. Very, very applicable to this day and age. And then I would say, man, there's so many. One of the ones that I just read is Savage Son by Jack Carr. In fact, the interview I did yesterday. Well, if you're listening to this live, it's the interview that came out today. If you're listening to this recording on the podcast, it's the interview that came out yesterday. You guys can figure it out. It came out on Tuesday. What is it? April 14th. Yeah. There you go. Savage Son by Jack Carr. That's a good read. It's part of the 3rd installment of the James Reese series. Fiction book, which I don't read a whole lot of fiction, so there's my fiction recommendation for you. Savage Son by Jack Carr.
Yeah, copy. And I was going to say, it's got to feel good every so often. Like yesterday I use Amazon for my bookmark, my book list.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what, I use my shopping list in Amazon to like, oh, I need to order that book. I can't count how many times that I'm like, I grab a book in my book list and one of the related recommendations is Sovereignty. I was like, oh, I feel like taking a screenshot, send it to you. I'm like, that's cool.
They know. Amazon knows.
Yeah. Well, and it's got to feel good to see like Bishop, John Gary Bishop, Jocko, Sovereignty. Oh, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh man, like that's a good lineup right there. Like that's pretty awesome.
I think though those recommendations say more about you than they do about me, right? Like these are the books. Is it
based upon my searches?
For sure. Because if it was my wife, it would be, I don't know, whatever she reads. I don't even know what she reads. Didn't somebody ask the other day about like book recommendations for women? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. So yeah, she'd have a completely different, and my book would not be on my wife's recommendation list. I can guarantee you that.
That's funny. Yeah, Amazon must not know I gave you a really low rating. That's weird.
Yeah, or maybe they knew you messed up and were like, let's give him another chance to get this thing right.
Yeah, that can't be correct.
That is not correct according to the rest of the feedback that we've received.
Oh, man, I have to bust your balls. All right, Scott's Hortmeyer What is one thing you are looking to execute on that is well outside your normal comfort zone, personal development or fitness related? Out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, I mean, right now I've really been focused on body fat percentage, which is hard because I love chips and salsa and ice cream. Like, let's just be real. If there's a bag of chips and salsa, I will eat the entire bag in one sitting, no problem, easily. Yeah. So it's been hard, especially late at night. Like, I'm like, oh, I just want to snack. I want to eat. So I've been doing the 75 hard program with Andy Frisella for, this is day 8, and man, I'm down. Body fat percentage, weight, like things feel good. I feel good. I have focus and clarity, and yeah, I'm hungry at times, but yeah, it's been fine. So that's pushed me outside of my comfort zone.
And that's 2 workouts a day?
2 workouts a day, 2 45-minute workouts per day. Okay. One of them has to be outside. That actually has been kind of tough because
that's kind of fun.
Well, it's fun, but it's also miserable. Like yesterday, I went and walked because I was doing team leader calls for the Iron Council. So I was on calls for 2 hours straight. And I took those calls outside, but it was raining. So I came back in and I was drenched, all layers from head to toe. But at the same time, so it's kind of miserable, but at the same time, it's kind of fun, walking around in the rain and making your calls and being productive in a lot of different ways. So that's been good. Personally, I'm working on the barn renovation right now. That's not pushing outside of my comfort zone necessarily. It's just a lot of work. I am going to start picking up the guitar again. That's something I did a little bit a while back. You remember that? And then I stopped, and then last night I picked it up again. So the dance, that's right. So probably pick up the guitar again. Yeah, that's where we're at right now. Actually, here's another thing. Origin wants to record a video, and they want to have me in the video, like acting in the video, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound
comfort zone. Yeah,
that doesn't sound good at all. So I said, yeah, I'll do it, and they're doing it this afternoon, in fact. And like, I'm excited about it because it'll be fun, and I like hanging out with the Origin crew, anyways. At the same time, I'm like, I used to make fun of the actors in high school.
What do I do with my
hands? Right,
just
exactly.
Put them here.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I've done that once before, and I just felt completely awkward the whole time. I'm like, so do I not, like, where do I look? And they're just, be yourself. I'm like, I can't do that. You're putting a camera on me.
Right.
I even felt that way originally. I remember when you're like, hey, record podcasts. And then one morning you're like, all right, we're going to do video. I'm like, well, hold on. What I got on?
I got to put my clothes on.
I have to put pants on.
I remember how afraid you were when you had to do the solo episode for the first time,
Oh my
I mean, you did awesome, but you're like, I have to do this by myself.
Tough.
It's awkward.
I didn't realize how tough they were. It just felt so awkward talking to myself and knowing that I'm recording and I could just hit stop and start over if I want to.
Yeah, that's
like,
a trap.
That was probably the hardest part.
That's why this live is good, because like there's no there's a 20-second delay. There's a 20-second delay. So if you say something or I say something completely outrageous, we have like really quick, 19 seconds to shut this thing down.
Yeah.
What else?
Right. Cross 88888. Good username there. What steps?
These remind me of like your first Yahoo or AOL email address, that you had when you were a kid, and then these people still have it 30 years later, and they're trying to get apply for the CEO position, and it's like Monster
Sexy
Balls
man,
37.
85.
Yeah.
Monster Balls at MSN.com.
That's right.
Well, I have Hotmail, and whenever I give someone my Hotmail, one, if I give you my Hotmail, it's because I'm suspecting that you're going to spam me. Second, they're like, ooh, you have a Hotmail account? I'm like, yes. And it's MAIL, not MALE.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. You got to be careful on that other one. My wife still uses her Yahoo account. I'm like, Yahoo? Really? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't do what's the fantasy football. My guys in the office are like, hey, you sign up for fantasy football? I'm like, yeah, what's the URL? I never do this. I go log in and it's like, you have to have a Yahoo account. I'm like,
yeah.
What? Hold on, stop. I'm going to make a Yahoo account. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And I just backed out because I'm like, I do not want another email that I'm never going to use for something.
Fantasy football is fun. I've done it. I did it for a couple of years when professional sporting outings and things were a thing. They're apparently not anymore.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I haven't done it for a while. I don't know, and I don't follow football enough to like be good, which actually might be good. Like maybe it would just be good just like to screw with everybody in the league and just like do random dumb things in the league just to mess with everybody.
Yeah, I went with the default, and it gave me like the worst team possible. And
yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing. All right, let's get you guys some valuable stuff here, other than Kip's opinion about Yahoo accounts. All right, what steps do you take to overcome the sudden anxiety of the overwhelming feeling of responsibility falling on your shoulders? I really love this question, by the way. Like as a man, so many things are expected of us, such as being a teacher, a protector, a trainer, the best father, a great example of a leader in our family and in Christ and in the community. But you always have the falling short feeling, or just like the job that you've done as a semi-sufficient. So just leave it, but you kind of have that feeling deep down that you're failing. It may be just me, but if you're experiencing this, what are the best steps you have taken to overcome it? Or if not, let's just theoretically say you have had to deal with this, and what advice do you have?
So generally, I think people fall into one of two camps. Like there's this spectrum of thoughtfulness and action. Yeah. And in order to be a healthy, mature individual, you should probably fall somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, right? You're thoughtful, meaning you're caring, kind, empathetic, self-aware, and then you're also willing to produce, take action, drive forward, take risks, and willing to look foolish and put yourself out there. And so a healthy, mature response to this spectrum is to find the balance, right? Find the middle ground. And sometimes it's gonna vary. It's gonna sway from side to side depending on your situation and what you might be dealing with. It seems to me like this individual is taking it to an unhealthy level of thinking. He's overanalyzing and overthinking to the point where now he's just got in his own head and he's getting in his own way. So somebody where
it's affecting action.
It's affecting action, right? It's affecting his ability to perform. Which is ironic because that's what he's concerned with. Hey, I'm concerned with these responsibilities. I want to perform, and so I'm going to think about it so much, and now it's hindering performance. So it's actually producing the exact opposite of the concern that you have. You've gotten in your own way. There's a phenomenon that happens with human beings called cognitive distortions. And we take things out of context and we blow them out of proportion, and we just do some very, very strange things with our minds that end up hindering our ability to drive forward and take action. That's where it sounds like, without any context, where this individual has fallen. So the answer to that is action. You can't think your way out of this thing. Yeah, that's part of the problem. What's probably happening is you've caught yourself in this perpetual cycle of thoughtfulness, right? So think about it. Oh, I feel bad about it. Oh, now I feel bad about feeling bad about it. Maybe I should do something. I don't know what to do. So then I'm guilty now about knowing I should be doing something, but I'm not willing to do it. And you've just created potentially this snowball of something that should be healthy, which is thoughtfulness. You've just taken it to the extreme. So the answer, the solution is to stop thinking about it. And maybe you have to document. You get a piece of paper out and you write down all of your responsibilities and all of your tasks and everything that you have to do. And this is what I do every day. I write down my tasks and the things I want to accomplish. And then you pick the easiest one on the list. You need to get some momentum towards action. You need to start moving from this side of the spectrum to the action side of the spectrum. Okay, so now when you take action on the easiest thing on the list, maybe the easiest thing is I got to do 10 push-ups because I want to be physically strong and I want to be capable. So easy, 10 push-ups. Everybody could do 10 push-ups right now, right? Now you get the ball rolling. Tomorrow you're like, cool, I did 10 push-ups. I feel good about that. And you should feel good about that. You moved. You took action. Tomorrow you give yourself some optimism and hope because you did it yesterday. So you can surely do it today. But today you can do 11 or 15 or 20, right? So you start building up these small wins and this momentum that will carry you into action and therefore the results that you produce. This is how you get yourself off that negative spectrum. The same thing happens with action takers. And this is where I default to. I default to action so much so that I'm not as thoughtful as I should be in a lot of cases. And then what ends up happening is I leave a wake of collateral damage in the path. I'm like, we got to be hyper efficient. We got to be hyper action. We got to get these things done. And then I forget, oh, we're just flying kites with my kids. Like this is supposed to be fun and enjoyable, not get the kite up there as fast as you can and like let's have kite wars, and like that's not what this is, right? So there's men who naturally gravitate towards that side. Those men, myself included in this, need to pull it back. How can I be more thoughtful? What is it? What's the underlying thing that I'm doing here? Like, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of doing this? How best can I impact other people? How will the way that I'm driving and carrying on with myself affect the way other people respond and the way they live their life? I tend to need to be more thoughtful, and those who naturally gravitate towards being more thoughtful need to be more action oriented.
Yeah. And I'm the other spectrum of you. Without
which is good, right? Which is good.
Overanalyze, overthink. I listened to an interview with an ex-Navy SEAL now. He's retired now, Chad Wright, and he was saying that during spuds, like during Hell Week, they do a run that's only like a couple miles, but guys don't know that it's a couple miles. And the not knowing it's a couple miles, he was saying that that's when most guys are dropping out on this run.
Yes.
Because they're anticipating that they're
making it worse.
How long is this hell going to last? And they're like, it's never going to end. And they all quit. When in reality, if the instructor just told them like, hey, it's only a mile run, then we deal with it. Right. And they say this all the time. It's like, it's a lot of those guys that get into the SEALs teams. It's like, it's because they look at the whole process and go, I can't do it. It's too difficult. But it's the guys that focus in and say, okay, I got a task right now and I'm doing this task right now. I'm not going to even look beyond, and I'm not going to psych myself out. And I even have this sense of this. I don't know about you, Ryan, but I even sense this on workouts. Like if I have a workout regimen, I look at it as a whole, that changes my ability to show up in the gym. I'm like, oh, and I'll kind of like drag my feet a little bit. Right. But when I think, hey, I'm just going to show up, exercise number 1. All right, do it. And I just do it. Exercise. But if I look at it as a whole, I have a tendency to just really psych myself out and make it worse than it really is. Just in my mind before I even start.
Yeah, that Navy SEAL example is a prime example of a cognitive distortion. We jump to worst case scenario. How bad is this going to be? And we dwell on that to the point where we make ourselves our own worst enemy. I even do the same thing in the gym. Like if I have 100 reps of something, like last night I did 100 rows with a center mass bell. I did 200 push-ups and I did 300 air squats. And like I didn't do 300 in a row. I did 10 rounds of 10 rows at a time, 20 push-ups, 30 air squats, 10 times. So I even break it down. Like if you can break it down into the lowest common number, because anybody can do 10 push-ups. Anybody can do 30 air squats. Anybody can do 10 rows. 200, 100, 300, a little more daunting. Anybody could probably do that as well, but you break it down into simple methods and simple units, you're much more likely to get it done.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on my daughter's, she has a little motorcycle. She's been harassing me about it, and I've been blowing her off, unfortunately, about getting it fixed. Part of it is why? I don't know what's wrong with it. It could be the battery, could be the stupid little starter, it could be the ignition, it could be the relay. Like, I don't even know what's wrong with it, right? And I look at it from that perspective, I'm just like, right?
Daunting.
But, yeah, and then finally I just went out there and says, I'm just going to check if it's the battery. That's it.
That's all you need to do.
And then I'm like, okay, it's not the battery. All right, is it the relay? Let's check the relay. Right. And it's like, man, it's so silly that just the unknown, what we create, right? The kind of meaning that we can create of like how complex something is, when really it's not that big of a deal if we just start acting, at least for me anyway.
Yeah, me too. Likewise.
All right. Match you hugs. What's your best advice for ways to teach your son that adversity is part of life and also that the key is getting better?
I think he has to see you doing it. Right. If you're never putting yourself in difficult situations, even getting your ass kicked a little bit too. Right. Like if you're not willing to get your butt handed to you, he's not going to be willing to do that. Like he has to see dad get the floor mopped, mop the floor with dad, like somebody like really take it to dad. Right. And then to see dad get back up. Yeah. And he's like, oh, it's not as bad as maybe I thought it was. So I think seeing it from you is going to be very, very valuable. And then I think you got to connect the dots too, right? So a lot of the times I think we as human beings, it's natural that we just look at pain as pain. That's it. Like there's no reward to pain. It's just painful because we're more focused on the here and now than the potential benefit of the pain that we're experiencing. So if all they ever experience is pain and you never reward them or make it fun or enjoyable or let them see the positive benefits of the pain that they are experiencing, then they're never going to connect the two. And so what naturally they're going to do is they're going to stay away from pain and only move towards things that are pleasurable in the here and now. And the things that are pleasurable in the here and now don't always, and in a lot of cases, don't typically serve us best. Like it would be great just to get wasted this afternoon and completely drunk. And that would actually feel really good in the here and now. I would like to do that. But I'm not going to do that because I have podcasts to do and I know how it's going to affect the way I show up for those podcasts and my ability to work and the things that I'm going to do with my family later this evening. So I'm willing to forego a little bit of temporary satisfaction in order to yield a result down the road. Now, you as an adult can make that connection because you've seen it over and over and time again. But children haven't put all those synapses together. Right? They haven't forged those paths or solidified the paths. That's your job. So if your kid's doing something difficult, then I think it should be fun and rewarding, and you should find some sort of reward or compensation or value, and then let him know, and him and her, both your daughter and son, to, hey, remember when you did all this painful stuff and how hard it was and how much you sweat and how much you didn't like it, but now look at what this produced. And the opposite of this is you can't give kids things they didn't earn. Mm-hmm. Because if you give the kids things they didn't earn, then they also can't make the connection between effort and result. They think just like these, like manna from heaven, right? Like things just show up and it just like comes into your life and it's magical and I don't have to do anything and it just shows up. And then they get into real life and they get their asses handed to them because people aren't just like bending over and giving them everything they possibly can. So don't give them things they don't earn, including birthday presents. I'm just kidding, by the way. Like, okay, birthday presents.
He didn't earn this.
He didn't earn this, that little punk. And make sure that you're connecting the dots between pain, suffering, temporary, here and now pain and suffering, with reward, satisfaction, fulfillment in the future.
Yeah. I want to point out the obvious. We're talking about delayed gratification.
Yes.
And by default, this does not show up in life. Like, look at the world in which we live in. We hop in a drive-through, we get the food. You don't like your car, you trade it in. You don't like your marriage, it's too difficult, you get a divorce. Like, everything is not about delayed gratification. Everything is immediate gratification. Mm-hmm. So look for the opportunities to really fight this. And I would even suggest, and not me, actually, this is someone else suggesting this, and I'm just regurgitating this information, but look at ADHD and see how that correlates to delayed gratification. I can't pay attention. I'm fidgety. Why? Because I've spent my entire life constantly receiving stimulus over and over without any effort. Mm-hmm. I got a dopamine dump for doing nothing, right? Oh, I have to work all day in the backyard to actually stand there and then feel dopamine and feel good that like, whoa, I actually feel good about working all day. But guess what? It takes all day, right? So we need to look for those opportunities of like, where can we delay gratification and let kids experience that there's some effort and then I get some benefit versus just instant benefit, because the world's going to give them that just naturally out of the box. Right.
I mean, this is the blessing and curse of modernity is the fact that everything, like, think about this, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, like we had to worry about the here and now because it's like, if I don't get food right now, I'm going to die. If I don't find shelter right now, I'm going to freeze to death. If I don't build a fire, like it's over. We don't have those pains anymore, right? Like you're not going to have to fight for your life. You're not going to have some sort of natural disaster that's probably going to kill you. There's no predator that's hunting you down and wants to eat your flesh and lick the meat off your bones. Like that's not happening. So we don't need to be like the same way that we were, in that like everything has to happen here and now. Like we've created an environment where we can exhibit some sort of this delayed gratification and sacrifice now so that we can have more down the road.
Yeah. It's so weird. And one thing that you brought up earlier about is, letting your kids see you fail. I struggled with let my kids watch me do jujitsu tournaments back in the day.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh man, I'm going to get my ass handed to me. I'm going to get beat up. And to be honest with you, why didn't I? Because of my ego, right?
Right.
I didn't
want your kids to see that.
Yeah. I didn't want to get beat up and have my kids not look up to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And not think I'm amazing. And in fact, their first few tournaments, I remember when my son Kiabe, he was crying. I'm getting beat up, right? And I'm getting choked out, and he's like crying. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, this adds worse to. But to your point, it's like, and then he saw me get up, and then
dust yourself off.
It again.
Right.
Yeah. And that, let's be honest, what's more valuable? For
of
your
course.
kid to see you conquer and destroy and think you're perfect, or to actually allow him see you fail, struggle, and get back up? Which one's more valuable?
Right.
And the latter is. It's hard on the ego a little bit.
A lot bit, for sure.
A lot bit.
Yeah.
A little tough. Yeah. All right. Alex Valerio, ever going to do a meetup in New Jersey?
No.
Or New York?
Not now.
Yeah. Good job, guys. Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. That's the answer. Maybe. I envision a time where we start to facilitate other men getting together and doing Order of Man sanctioned events and meetups on their own. So will I do one? No. I mean, just New Jersey, Maine, like what's that? 3 hours, 4 hours maybe like 3 hours on a flight.
Good point.
It's like, come up here, come to one of our main events, come to a Legacy, come to an Uprising. If you really want to wait for a meetup, then wait for a meetup or just start one.
Yeah, we need to do another. Dude, Nashville was so fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we were supposed to do one.
I love them.
The main event in May, but that's been postponed. We had 100 guys coming out here, and we postponed that till the fall. So it is coming up.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I'm wondering how this all pans out.
Yeah,
all right, John Porter, 91. How do you balance telling men the truth while at the same time being graceful and not coming across like a huge jerk?
I think it comes down to your motive. Like if you're talking at people in order to prop yourself up, then your motives are wrong, and the foundation by which you're communicating are inferior to the motive of striving to serve, right?
Yeah.
So you can be firm, you can be resolute, you can call people. Also, you should know your place. Like offering unsolicited feedback is rarely appreciated. And frankly, it's not even your job or position to do it. So you have to be careful offering unsolicited advice. I would highly encourage against that, but do what you want.
But assuming that you're in a position where it's your responsibility. Yeah.
What is it? Are you more worried about yourself, or are you more worried about that individual? Because if you're worried about that individual, you can come across as hard-lined and take a strong stance and even get in their face a little bit, and they will respect and appreciate that. I had a brief interaction with my high school baseball coach on social media the other day, and he's still coaching high school baseball. Totally. And I remember thinking about conversations and huddles that we'd have together and lessons that he would teach us on the baseball field and football field. And I remember him being very stern. I remember the look on his face when he was disappointed. And you could tell, like, when he was disappointed, he had this look of, like, disappointment, disgust. You're like, it really cut through you. Just the face, just his expression. Yeah. But I never doubted his care for us. Like, there wasn't ever one time where I was like, oh, man, he hates us, or he doesn't like us. Or it was always like, no, he sees the best in us. He wants to win. So he was able to be tough because the motive was right, and it was good. It was a superior motive.
And you feel that you knew he cared for you because he probably reflected when criticizing and made sure that it was coming from a place of correction. You know what I mean? Like, what was it specific that allowed you to know that he cared?
I actually like the word. Yeah, I like the word that you used, which is correction.
Yeah.
Because if people are, again, if their motive is pure and people are correcting, that means they care.
Yeah.
People who don't care, they don't correct. They criticize. There's a difference, right? You're doing it wrong. You suck. Everything about your message is wrong. Everything what you're doing is moronic and idiotic. That's criticism, right? Correction is, hey, and I've had people say this. Hey, Ryan, I noticed, you know, on the podcast, the audio quality the other day wasn't to par. It wasn't what it usually is. And I found that if you do X, Y, and Z, it sometimes cleans that up. I actually had a guy reach out to me the other day and he said, hey, I noticed on the last 2 podcasts that the outro music, the music at the end of the podcast was cutting out. And I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but I just wanted to tell you because you may just want to look at it. Correction, not criticism. I mean, yeah, he found something that was wrong, but he offered a solution to it. And that's one of the ways that you can know whether somebody really has your best interest at heart.
And your coach, because he was true with his intent, his actions reflected caring. But you're saying if ego is in there, he may have talked to you differently if ego was involved, if criticism was involved, and thus you would have picked up at that. Just naturally.
Completely. Because his attitude would have been more like, you guys are miserable. I can't believe how horrible you are.
Call you guys names or whatever. You guys
I don't want to be your I mean, I wish I had a team like that. I wish those guys were because they're better than you guys. It's all just, and all it does is designed to do, whether it's intentional or not, is to lift and prop up that individual.
I actually, if you don't mind me sharing an example of this very thing, and I was at work, team meeting yesterday, owner, we communicated some changes for the team of how we're going to do something, and someone changed something and they communicated out, and in my mind, I was immediately like, yeah, that's a dumb idea. We shouldn't be doing it that way. Hopefully they don't listen. I guess. Who's joking?
They do.
So
who is it? What's her name?
Probably.
I'm just kidding.
Nothing. But anyhow, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, no, that's a bad idea. This is all the reasons why, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then I reached out to the leadership team and started writing that message of, hey, I think what I originally wrote was like, I think we're doing this wrong and this is why, blah, blah, blah. And I paused and I thought, okay, what's my motive here? And my motive actually was to look good. There was a little bit of looking good there. Like, oh, I know what's right. Mm-hmm. And this is what should be right. So that way they all know.
Right.
And I paused for a second. I
Propping
thought,
yourself
no,
up.
Actually, yeah, I was propping myself up, but it was like it was hidden in there, right? Like it was difficult. By default, I could have easily went with this is because I'm right and this is what's best for the company. But there is some propping happening. And so I removed that message and I retyped it and said, help me understand this adjustment more so I can get behind it and make sure that I'm committed to it. And I left it as that. I'd even suggest why or what I think might be wrong. Why? Because that's the part of that conversation which was about me looking good. Mm-hmm. So then I just left it as help me understand more so I can back and be committed to this for the team.
Right.
And I left it as that. And it was a hard pill to swallow a little bit because I was like, oh, I want to tell them why and why my idea or whatever kind of deep down inside. And I thought, no, that's not the intention. Right. And so I had to make that adjustment.
One of my fears in you saying that, though, is that people will believe that you can't look good and also be humble at the same time. You know what I mean? In order for me to be humble, I have to throw myself under the bus. No, not at all. And just because you might look good doesn't mean that you're being overly braggadocious or asserting yourself too much and leaving that collateral damage in your path. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think they might be correlated, but they're not directly related. Like you can, your response actually makes you look good, but that isn't the motive. The motive is I want to understand. I want the team to win. I want all of us to thrive. And then whatever happens, the result of it, by the way that people perceive me, the result is the result. But my motive is to help the team win.
Yeah, totally.
I think sometimes we just put it's almost like putting the cart before the horse, right? We want to look good. And so we reverse engineer. Okay, what can I say or do that would help me look good?
Yeah.
Or help me
versus
be credible.
Have that be the result.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Cody Riedinger. What hunts do you have planned this year? A Maine mountain warrior on the list. A Maine mountain warrior.
I don't know. That sounds cool.
Particular,
yeah,
that's good.
I don't know.
I want to be a Maine mountain warrior.
I want to go to that. Whatever that is, I want to go to that. If you're telling me to
Hunger
create
Games,
that, I'm like, that's
but
cool too.
Dudes show up. Yeah.
What is it? Maine mountain warrior?
Maine mountain warrior.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There you go.
That's going to happen this fall. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
Hunts that I have planned. I've got a turkey hunt here on our property in the next month. And I've got a whitetail hunt in Minnesota planned for the fall.
Cool. Can you bait turkey on your property on that hunt? Can you do that?
I actually don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Because you know how like bears, you can do that on a bear hunt, for instance.
You can bait bear. Yeah. You can't bait deer during hunting season, but you can do it outside of hunting season.
Yeah, to kind of create traffic for later. Yeah.
Yeah. But I actually don't know on turkey if you can do it. I imagine you could do it before turkey season, before the opener, but I don't know if you can do it after. It's a good question. I know kind of where they bed and where they spend time, and we'll go out there and we'll call them.
They're on your property.
They're on the property. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love that. All right. Tech tool toys. How to go from working labor hours as a bartender to creating income that isn't limited to hours on the clock. And maybe we just generalize this, right? About maybe even the value of the exact exchange of work for time for money versus, passive income.
Yeah. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about this in his book. I think it came out, probably 20 years ago, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he talked
back in Nintendo days. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I think that was a little after Nintendo days, but okay. That was like PlayStation days, maybe like
PlayStation,
PS1.
Comcast, or not Comcast, Dreamcast days.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
What is Dreamcast?
Everyone's going to assume I'm a nerd. It was like another console.
We already know that. We already know.
It was another console before. It was actually pretty amazing before PlayStation, I believe. Dreamcast was. It wasn't as popular.
Sounds lame. Sounds like only something nerds would play.
Certainly doesn't sound like Mountain
Warrior Man or whatever.
Jeez.
What was the question? Oh, passive income. Okay, so Robert Kiyosaki talked a lot about this. Most people are employed, meaning they're trading time for money. I go in and I do my work, whatever that stated work is, and you pay me $50 or $100 or whatever per hour of work that I do. So that's an employment thing. But a lot of self-employed individuals do it too, right? Like CPAs, for example, or even attorneys is a great example.
I did consulting.
Consulting.
When you're an independent consultant, it's like my time for money. That's
right.
There's no difference.
Your employer is your client, right? Because you have an agreement with your client that says, okay, I'm going to do this work for you, and you're going to pay me $100 an hour or whatever it is, right? Yep. Whatever those terms are. So it doesn't matter if you're employed or self-employed. You're just trading time for dollars. Now you have passive income where it's happening regardless of what you're doing. One way of doing this is instead of being a CPA, maybe now you own the firm. And so you have 5 CPAs and they're trading time for money, but you're not, right? Now you can go out and do your thing and that money is coming in. Another way is your investments. Could be real estate, could be the stock market, other speculative investments where you put your money to work, and while you're over here doing other things, your money is working and it's earning returns and yielding those returns to you passively while you're not actively engaged in exchange of time for money.
Yep.
And would you add anything to that?
No, I was just going to say where this comes into play is people that want flexibility of schedule and time. There becomes a point where you're like, okay, I don't want to work 40 or 50 hours. Like if I want to make more money than I make now, I have to get paid more each hour, or I have to work more time, right? Or come up with an avenue by which you create some passive income for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can look at the order of man model as a passive revenue strategy. And you can also look, there's elements of it that are not passive too, that are more of employed strategy. So employed strategy would be me doing one-on-one coaching. So if somebody calls me up and they say, hey man, I'm looking for some coaching on a podcast. Can you help me? And I say, yeah, I can help you. And here's how much it's going to be. Then they pay me for that time. That's employed income. It's not passive, right? A passive strategy is if we have an advertiser for the podcast and they're going to pay X amount of dollars per person that listens to the podcast. Well, I'm over here working on a book or at an event or in the Iron Council, and my podcast is over here working, picking up listeners and advertising dollars without me having to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. So we actually adopt to employ both strategies.
Any suggestions, I guess, for tech toys, right? He's a bartender and he's like, hey, how do I go down this path.
Oh yeah. Like put together and I don't drink, so my ignorance is going to show here, but put together an ebook that's 50 of the best mixes that are out there, including 10 of your own custom signature mixes that nobody's ever heard of before, and charge $5 for it.
Yeah, or how to be a home bartender.
Yes.
Create your own book, so that way people can figure out your mixes at home and kind of, be cool.
How to do a YouTube video that shows like the 30 coolest bartender tricks, and then make a YouTube channel and put out a dozen, 100, 1,000 videos and pick up advertising dollars from those videos while you're bartending. Your YouTube channel is over here as a little mini employee doing its thing, collecting revenue and sending it directly to you. I don't know if you want to stay in the bartending space, but if you start thinking about, like, everybody has knowledge, right? I think about guitar. I just picked up the guitar last night for the first time in several months. I'm strumming the guitar on the dance on the guitar. I'm doing my thing, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, there's really an opportunity for people to teach lessons digitally.
Totally.
Like, we used to think you had to do it in person. The problem with in person is you can only do it once unless you have like a group of people you're teaching, and then that diminishes some of the value. So you can only do it one at a time, meaning I can only have one student at a time. A great example of this is in Groundhog Day. Bill Murray wants to learn to play the piano. So he goes to this piano teacher and he says, hey, I want to learn the piano. And the piano teacher says, if you come back next week, I'll be able to teach you. I have a student here, so I can't teach you right now. Well, we know like he doesn't have any more days. He only has the one day. So he's like, I'll give you $1,000. And the next scene is her kicking the little girl out of the house because she's not paying her $1,000, but Bill Murray is, right?
Yeah.
This is what you have to do. This is like the battle. If you're only doing one-on-one, is it's all about like, how can I generate the maximum amount of value for my time? But what if this piano teacher had an app or a YouTube channel that taught all of the lessons, and those who wanted individual lessons she could probably charge more for individual lessons. But in the meantime, she could send Bill Murray or whoever over here to the YouTube channel, and they could learn all the lessons, and she's picking up ad revenue. And then she creates an ebook that shows you, the basic chords and notes and how to play and all that kind of stuff. So just take the information, the knowledge you already have, and figure out a way to make it available digitally and then sell it. Or get eyeballs, because there's also the attention economy. So YouTube, the podcast, what you're listening to right now is part of the attention economy. You're not paying me, right? Like nobody's listening to this podcast and they're paying for it. They're all listening to it and engaging for free, which is actually very cool. But your attention is worth something. It's worth something if I'm speaking objectively. It's worth something to me, and I'll explain that in a second. And it's also worth something to YouTube or other advertisers.
Yep.
Because they can put their message in front of you and hopefully you'll buy their stuff. That's why it's free. Otherwise, it wouldn't be free. It's also valuable to me because at some point, a percentage of you will buy the book, will join the Iron Council, will come to one of our events, will ask me for individual coaching, buy one of our other courses or programs available. So yes, I'm giving this in a way that you can consume it, and the percentage of you who are interested in going above and beyond can go buy the other features and options and things that we have available. Like merchandise, for example, is another great resource.
Yeah.
It's like people they're going to say, hey, that's a cool hat. I like that hat. Go to the store, they'll buy it. And then I have an employee, my son, who takes care of it all. So I pay him. He's employed, right? He's trading time for dollars. I am not, because I employ him to do it.
Yeah. I love it. And Tech Tool Toys, you could just send me an email. Let me know how to make a solid virgin mojito that's, tastes good.
There you go.
I ask. All right.
Charge him. Don't do it for free. Charge him for it, man. Charge it for him.
No. Hold on.
All right, man. Let's take a couple more and then wrap this thing up today.
All right. The Roach, cultivating discipline when you're not yet disciplined and struggling with maintaining it. How does a man find meaning in what and when the payoffs are not yet apparent or don't seem worth it at first?
I did a podcast yesterday, and it will be released in about 3 weeks with Mark Manson. He's the author of Everything is effed and the subtle art of not giving an F. And he actually talks about this in Everything is Effed, is that if we are emotional creatures, right? And a lot of us try to pretend like he talks about it from the context of the feeling brain versus the thinking brain. And all of us are dictated by the feeling brain. And then we try to support what our feeling brain is doing with our thinking brain.
Justifying whatever.
That's
doing,
right.
Yeah.
So we justify, we fill in the blanks, and we rationalize why the feeling brain is doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he talks about that. He says the reason that you don't diet is because you don't feel like it. Like you feel like eating all the chips and salsa.
Yeah.
And then your thinking brain justifies it, like, oh, you've worked hard, or you've dieted for the past week, you deserve it, you're special, all these little things that the thinking brain whispers to the feeling brain to support what it actually wants to do.
Yeah.
So the way that you change your habits, and we're talking about discipline here and the things that he's addressing, is by tapping into your feelings, right? Like how do you make it more enjoyable? You know, I'm thinking about 75 hard as I'm a week into this thing, and like how do you sustain a diet? How do you sustain working out 2 days a week? How do you sustain changing your lifestyle? You attach the effort to the thing that your feeling would want. Like, I like to be acknowledged. I like to be recognized. I like when I look in the mirror that I look fit and strong. I like that when I go to jujitsu that I'm not like a limp noodle, like a weak little fish. Like, I'm a force to be reckoned with. And although I may not be as technical now as I'd like to be, there's still some strength there that helps me hold my own, right? I take pride in that. I feel good about that. I mean, even the language is like, that feels good, which means that I'm appealing to my feeling brain, not my thinking brain. Now, when I feel good about all the results that I know I will produce, then my thinking brain comes in and tries to rationalize, justify, and solidify what the thinking brain already wants to do, which is to feel good, is to be strong, is to be assertive, it's to have influence and credibility and authority with other people. And so now my thinking brain is like, hey, if you really want to do this, we can do this, and here's what you got to do in order to do it. And it starts backfilling all of the actions and all the beliefs that you need to have in order to support what your feeling brain is experiencing.
Does he share where that emotional side eventually like changes your perception of self a little bit? Because I can see where we do things because I perceive myself as that kind of person, right? Like I would never steal unless I've already accepted the idea that I'm that kind of person that would steal. And some things we may like, there's no way I'll ever do that. Why? Because that's just not who I am. Well, in reality, I just don't perceive myself that way.
Yeah. But what's interesting about this, and this is the way he explains it, is you think about stealing. Did you ever steal anything when you were younger?
Totally. Yeah.
Did you get caught?
Bubble yum.
Okay. Did you ever get caught?
Yeah, I did.
And did you get punished?
Yep.
There was a consequence to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, and did you feel bad about it?
Yep.
That's why you don't do it, because you feel like shit when you steal.
So my emotion changed. I went, I don't like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, your emotion didn't change. The story, the meaning that you gave it changed.
But my feeling brain went, you don't like that. Yeah.
It wasn't. Look, it's more rational to steal shit than it is to work for it. It's way more rational.
Yeah.
But the only reason most of us don't, generally, is because it doesn't feel good. And he talks about there's a morality gap, I think is what he calls it. I can't remember exactly the term he talks about, but then we feel like, okay, well, I stole from this individual. Now I got to rectify. So there's some guilt. Ding, ding, ding. Guilt is a feeling.
Yeah.
Not a thought, not a rational thought. It's a feeling, right? So we're always appealing to this feeling side of things. But he does talk about what you're saying, the identity. James Clear actually talks a lot about the identity too in his book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
But Mark Manson says that the identity comes after you've rectified the feeling brain, and you've got that
that's the first step in this process.
Yeah, he calls it integration. You want to integrate the feeling with the thinking brain, and when those two things are integrated, then you're more optimistic, you're more fulfilled, you're comfortable, you can build some level of confidence. I feel like we're kind of dancing around the issue right here, but ultimately, how can you make waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning feel good? How can
That's
you?
the focus. How do you make it feel good?
Right.
Not how do you do it because
Yes.
you hate it. It's how do you make it feel good?
Right. How, and again, James Clear supports this in his book too when he talks about make it fun. He's basically saying the same thing. Fun is a feeling. I feel joy, happiness, bliss. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Those are feelings. So find a way to make it fun, even if you have to like be very creative and liberal in what is fun and what isn't. And you're going to have an easier time of getting up early and eating vegetables and not eating the chips and salsa and the ice cream and having the conversations and making the phone calls. I remember when I was early in my financial planning practice, we were told we need to make, whatever it was, 20, 30, 40 calls a day. And I was like, ugh, this is miserable. And I actually changed it to be fun because I started keeping score. I would write down, I just put a little tick mark, like 1 call, 2 calls, 3 calls, 5 calls. And I tried to get to 20 per day. That was my goal, 20 per day. Okay. And then I would start backfilling in the ratios. I'm like, okay, I got 20 people and 12 of them answered. And so that's whatever percent, that's like, I don't know, 55%, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then of those 11 or 12 people who answered, 5 of them gave me appointments. So that's a little less than 50% conversion ratio for the people I talked to and 25% conversion ratio for the people that I called. And I'm like, so I had all this written out. And then the next day I'm like, what can I say that would actually improve that to make that go up? And I would track it every day. And that for me, like some people are like, that is weird. Like I would never do that because that sounds miserable. Cool. Then that's not your trigger. That was my trigger. That's what made it fun, a competition with myself. And therefore I got into the office and I'm like, all right, got my 20 calls. And then I got to the point, I remember one point where I would have an appointment and I'm like, oh, I have to do this appointment. I need to go make like these 20 calls. I'm like, whoa.
Well, it's almost like you wanted to do the calls. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa, no, this is an appointment. I'm like, but how am I going to get my 20 calls in if I have this appointment? So like,
that's fun.
You can see how it works.
Yeah, totally. And I even do it from a rep perspective. That's why I track my reps. Because I go, oh, I've done this exercise before. Oh, how much weight did I do? How many reps? All right.
Or I did it faster.
Got 11. I got 11 this time.
Yes.
I'm bumping up to 10.
Yep.
Right. What's new PR, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
All right, man. Let's take it home.
Yeah. All right. So we filled these questions from Mr. Michler. We talked even about his Twitter account. You can follow him both on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Michler. That's RyanMichler. And of course, join us in the fight to restore masculinity. You can do so by obviously just following and subscribing to this podcast, subscribing to the YouTube channel, or joining us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/Order of Man, or within the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, our exclusive brotherhood, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And we do have swag in the store. That's store.orderofman.com. And support the message, share the podcast, wear some gear if this message resonates with you guys. So
cool. That's it, guys. Appreciate you tuning in live. If you had, we had anywhere from, I think, 40 to 80 people on watching live, and we'll have thousands of people listen in and watch later, I'm sure. If you're interested in that, make sure to head to youtube.com/Order of Man. So we'll let you get going, but I'll be back on Friday, and Kip will be back next week on Wednesday, excuse me.
Wednesday.
Yep. But until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.